Hi, Tina here from Formed Architects. Today I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about those of you that are in the process of buying a house and knowing that the house is potentially a project or you're looking to do some work, and really about when to get involved with an architect if you are buying a house that you know you need work doing, or it is a bit of a project, or it hasn't really been touched since the 1960s and you know that it's going to need a little bit of injection. So the first thing to say is probably you want to have the conversation with us probably even before you put your offer in, if that is potentially possible. And that's partly to get clarity on what is possible beyond the kind of estate agent spiel where they say lots of potential subject to permissions, and that's kind of a loose caveat, and you've got to do your own homework as to what is going to be possible within that. So relative to that, we would say, get us, if you can, get us in, have a conversation with us earlier rather than later, outlining what it is you think you would like to do. Potentially, we could have a quick call with yourself on the phone with the estate agent's plans, assess whether what you're looking to do is going to be possible, and more importantly, get some clarity as to whether or not that's going to be viable within whatever budget you might have. So particularly at the moment where house prices are a little bit more reduced, you may have a little bit more of a budget to do the works involved, but equally with rising construction costs, you want a sense of not just what that's going to cost now, but realistically by the time you've been through the sales process and got all the permissions in place, what it's actually going to cost, probably anywhere upwards of 12 months time, because that's really when you're going to be paying for it. And obviously we don't have a crystal ball, but we have a better sense of where the prices are going on familiar projects such as rear extensions, single story or two-story and loft conversions. So the earlier that you have the conversation with us, the better. The second thing to bear in mind is actually if the house that you're thinking about putting an offer in has a lot of work involved, some of the other stuff can cost a lot of money. Say, for example, if you're looking to rewire the house or it needs upgraded in terms of plumbing and heating, they can take big chunks, and that's before you've done any real building work to the main sort of facade and externals. So that's all kind of really useful to kind of get a sense of what that's going to cost you, so that when you put an offer in, it is from an informed position. So that early call where we look through the estate agent particulars with yourself, that can be useful. And in certain instances, subject to where the property is, we may even say, actually, it's going to be useful for us to come around, have a walk through, understand what's possible, and then say, okay, this is what potential it has. This is what you will get out of it at the end of it, subject to this level of capital injection. And so you come from a more informed position. The other thing to bear in mind is the earlier you get us involved in that process, the better it's going to be for you in the long term. So the ideal situation is before you put an offer in, so your offer is more informed, you know what's going to be possible and roughly how much it's going to cost, and you've budgeted from the outset. The second side of that is actually you can then within your sort of offer process put in some long stops, and by that I mean some delayed completions, or subject to exchange. You then have a longer completion process, at which point you may well be in a position to feel more comfortable to inject a little bit of money to get the planning permission and all the rest of that sort of paperwork in place, so that actually when you own the property at completion, and inevitably you may well be paying a mortgage for it at that point, that is the point when the builders can go in. Now that's not always going to be possible because some of it does depend on the vendor, but you can approach that conversation from a more informed position so that you are not paying to have an empty property before you have works done and then potentially paying for somewhere else at the same time. And that's something else to consider. And in some instances that works really well because we can do sort of a delayed completion for 6 months, particularly if the person at the other end is not looking for the money or the sale sort of immediately. Therefore, you've got a long gap to get your planning permissions in place, get a builder lined up, get all the sort of work done on the sort of the front end work, if you like, that allows you to start the work on site. And therefore, from the point that you own it, you're not sort of paying double mortgages or potentially renting one place and mortgaging in the other. The downside with that approach, and there is a downside, is obviously you won't have lived in the place to fully understand what is going to be possible. And that's probably where you want the expertise of an architect like us, where we're actually going through piece by piece through the property with you to understand what it is you really want to achieve from it. And that sort of initial foresight and those initial conversations really do inform the design. And so you have better clarity as to how you may well live in the space and what you need to get out of it. So the earlier you have the conversation with us through the sales buying process, the easier it's going to be for you. We can advise you through this whole process from start to finish, and how the benefit of, you know, having those early conversations with the architect can really sort of materialize into better gains through the process, so you're not paying for things twice. Hope that was useful. If you want any further information, please do get in touch.